saying, I was explaining, is the Camino calling you? And it's interesting the way that it calls us to it in various ways. My name is Sue Kenny. I've walked the Camino 11 times now. Each May, I lead a group of pilgrims along the Camino. We walk 225 kilometers for 11 days. So I've done it many, many times. I've walked different routes. I've walked forward, backward, from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Santiago, from Santiago to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. I've met many, many pilgrims in my life, and I live the Camino every single day. I live my life here at home as though it is a metaphor for the Camino, for a life journey with purpose. So today what I want to do is just impart some ideas and some of the experiences that I've had along the way to help you to maybe decide, is this something that you want to do? Is this something that's calling you? Often people ask me the same questions over and over again, and they're just like common questions that we as human beings want to know. And one of the questions I often get is, am I too old to walk the Camino? Or how old is too old? Well, the Camino isn't really about age. The Camino is about the mind, the power of the mind. I've met many people along the way from the age of 7 years old. Actually, no, I met a 4-year-old pilgrim, and she was obviously with her parents and being pushed in a stroller, and it was quite an experience for them. I also met a 7-year-old that walked all the way from Le Puy, France, to Santiago. But I've also met people who are quite a bit older. One woman was 84, and she walked all the way from Germany. I once had a pilgrim in my group who was 75 years old and suffering from severe osteoporosis. And she's a retired doctor, so she knew what she was doing. But that woman, she inspired all of the people in our group. It was a very hot year that year. There were 11 of us walking, and I'm telling you, this woman was the strongest of everyone. So don't even think about age. Don't think about how old you have to be, how old's too old. That's not even an issue. Now, you're probably wondering about the terrain on the Camino. There are all different types of terrains. It depends too on where you are. So for example, if you want to start your Camino in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, where a lot of pilgrims will start, but again, you have to have the time, and it usually takes anywhere from 30 to 35 or 36 days. But if you walk from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, then you're going to cross 3 mountain ranges. You're going to walk through the Meseta, which is an area of like almost 200 kilometers where it's relatively flat, and there isn't a lot to see, and there isn't a lot to do. Some people feel that the Meseta is too boring, and they will, either take a bus or a train or just, skip it altogether. I had quite a different experience on the Meseta. I found that the boringness of it was actually quite good for my mind. It made me go to a place I didn't really want to go, but in the end, it's like anything in life. If you reach sort of a breaking point, it's often at that point where our body and our mind sort of stops fighting, and we let go and surrender to the way. And sometimes it's in the surrender that we find the most incredible experiences of all. You have to remember too that people have been walking the Camino for over 1,100 years. This is not new. It's new to a lot of, even North Americans, but it's not so new to Europeans. The pilgrims of the past would leave their home, and many of them walked for religious reasons, because its origins are that it's a Roman Catholic pilgrimage route, but they walked for spiritual reasons. Sometimes they walked for absolution, or they would walk in the name of somebody who couldn't walk. And then there were always the pilgrims who walked just for the sport of it. And these pilgrims would leave their home, say goodbye to, their relatives, maybe their family, to the villagers, and they would head off to Santiago. Now, bear in mind, when they got to Santiago, there wasn't a bus or a train or a plane for them to catch and make their way back home again. They actually had to turn around and walk the entire journey all the way back. So modern day pilgrims have the luxury of deciding, okay, how much time do I have? How far can I physically walk, or do I want to walk? And when I get to Santiago, we have the option of, touring around and checking out the city, knowing full well that, we can easily make our way home again. And that was one of the reasons that I chose to walk the reverse way, because I wanted to experience what the pilgrims of the past experienced when they walked what is known as al contrario, or the contrary way. So that's another option if you want to walk the Camino in an old-fashioned way. Now, speaking of the medieval pilgrims, they would have had very few options as far as places to sleep. And people are always asking me, well, what's it like on the Camino? Where do you sleep? Do you have to tent? Do you have to sleep out under the stars? No, you don't have to. You can. It's a choice. But there are hostels all along the way for the pilgrims. And these hostels, some of them have been there for a very long time, like the parochial ones that are run by the church. They've been looking after pilgrims throughout the centuries. There are municipal albergues or refugios, or they have different names, but they're like hostels. And the municipal ones generally are quite reasonable, like maybe €5 a night. And you can stay in, sometimes it's quite a large room with row after row after row of bunk beds. Many of us as adults haven't slept in a bunk bed for a long time, so it takes a little bit of getting used to. But it's a lot of fun too, because it's like having a pajama party of sorts. One thing that I learned walking the Camino is that people snore. A lot of people snore, more than I ever imagined. So I encourage you, if you have trouble sleeping, it might be a good idea to bring earplugs so that you can sleep through the night. In these albergues, they often have just a little bit of heat. So if you're walking in the shoulder seasons or in the winter, it isn't necessarily toasty warm all night long, but they will have some heat in the early part of the evening so that when you go to bed, it's at least warm. But when you wake up in the morning, it's often a little chilly. There are, of course, washrooms and showers. Most of the albergues now have hot water and, plenty of it. Although sometimes when you get there, if there have been lots of pilgrims who have arrived before you and they've showered, it's possible that you could be out of hot water. So keep in mind that, if you're taking a shower, try not to take a really long shower, because there might be somebody, finishing their walk for the day, and they would totally look forward to a nice warm shower. So being a pilgrim on the Camino often requires us to think about other people and to be aware of what the needs are of others around us. And most of it is common sense, but then again, sometimes we forget about that. Sometimes we forget about it, not always. The Camino gives you an opportunity to practice sharing with others, thinking about others. Even when you arrive in the albergue, sometimes, you're hungry after a day of walking and you just want a nice hot shower, some clean clothes, or at least relatively clean clothes. And then the next thing you want to do is eat. So in most of the villages where you'll be staying, there are restaurants, or tabernas, as they're called in Spain, where you can go and have a bite to eat. When I first walked the Camino in 2001, I walked in November, December, and because it was in the winter, many of these tabernas and the hostels, they closed down because there wasn't enough business to keep them open. So that created just another layer of concern or worry for a pilgrim. So if you are walking in the winter, you know, just now we have the internet, we have so many ways of finding out about the albergues and what's open and where we are next, that it isn't as big a problem, but just something to be aware of. The other big question is about the backpack. You know, many people haven't carried a backpack for a long time, and they're, and if you're walking the Camino and you're, in your retirement years or later on in your life, it quite possibly could have been a long time since you carried a backpack. So I guess the question is, to carry or not to carry. And that really becomes a personal choice as well. What I always say to people about the Camino is, it's your journey. It's your Camino. The Camino doesn't always give us what we want. It more often gives us what we need. And so if you think about your backpack, do you need to take all the extra things that you'd like to have on your Camino? Or is it possible to really scale down, to take the least amount possible, and then actually learn to trust that whatever you need will show up? When I walked my first Camino in particular, I learned that lesson many, many, many times. Some people on the Camino call them Camino angels. They're people that just show up on your Camino path at the very moment that you need them. I remember one day just, running into a pilgrim, and I was really hungry and thirsty. I had just a little bit of water left, and I was saving it, stretching it out to get to the next location. And this pilgrim came along, and he had an orange. He peeled the orange and shared it with me, and it was the best orange I've ever eaten in my whole life. I will never, never forget the taste and the joy I experienced just eating a simple orange. So again, the Camino, offers us this opportunity to really consider the simple things in life. So about the backpack, I recommend to people to try not to carry anything more than about 15 pounds. That can be difficult to do for many of us. In particular, when we add water and food to our backpack, it's going to add another couple of pounds. So just when you're getting ready to go on your Camino, consider everything that you're putting in your backpack. And if you can leave it at home, leave it at home. Don't even think twice about it. Just take the bare necessities. And when you buy a backpack, the bigger the backpack you buy, the more opportunity for you to fill it. So keep your backpack small. 30, 32 liters is more than enough for you to carry. And the lighter the pack, the easier it is for you to walk longer distances. When you get to Spain, the beauty of walking the Camino today is there are several different services. Mochila is the word for backpack in Spanish. And so these taxis will carry your mochila from albergue to albergue. And you pay them, a small fee, and they'll take it for you. And when you arrive at your destination, your backpack will be waiting for you. That's an option. And I don't consider that it's absolutely necessary that you have to carry your backpack. The pilgrims of old, they just carried a walking stick with maybe a gourd on it and some clothing wrapped up. They had very little on their backs. We modern day pilgrims tend to carry much more than we absolutely need. So if we can learn to let go of some things on the Camino, then ideally that would translate to coming back home from the Camino and learning how to let go of some of the things that we have at home, so that we're not hoarding or, filling our cupboards with food that we're never going to be able to eat, or, buying so many clothes or shoes that we couldn't possibly wear them. This is a great way of practicing actually letting go and doing with less. I love what the native people talk about, when they go into nature and they go into the forest and they take from the forest only what they need. And if they don't use it, they return it. And I love that idea as a philosophy for life, especially for pilgrims, because we learn that every day. So there is a spiritual component to the Camino. I absolutely believe it. As I said, its origins are that it's a Roman Catholic pilgrimage route. And the pilgrims of the past, they believed that if you walk the Camino, that you would be closer to God. And that's why they walk the pilgrimage route. This journey of taking one step after another. And in some way, I felt like I'm stepping into the footsteps of the pilgrims who walked before me. And those pilgrims, it could be literally millions of pilgrims or millions of footsteps. And with each of these steps that you take, you're retracing their journey. And many pilgrims walk, even today, many pilgrims walk with an intention. And it's something I always encourage the people in my group to think about, what is it that you want to focus on? What part of your life right now is feeling like it needs some attention or needs some focus? And it could be really simple. It could be just, getting more clarity, just like looking at life as you walk along and taking it in, being aware. When you're on the Camino, you slow your life down to 3 or 4 kilometers an hour. For me, that's pretty slow, or it was at least when I first walked the Camino. I believed I had to do everything fast. I had to rush through life. I worked in the high-tech industry. I was constantly, ahead of the curve in terms of what was coming out. And everything I thought about, I did fast. When I got on the Camino, it's not easy to go fast because all of a sudden you're carrying a backpack, you're sleeping in a different place every night. I mean, just imagine, you just get comfortable in a bed and then you pack up your sleeping bag and you pack your backpack up, put it on and start walking again. And the next place you get to could be completely different from what you've just experienced. So you're constantly being asked to adapt and change and be comfortable in that state of constant adaptation and change. Ideally, we're going to learn from that. I don't think there are that many people that, that don't have a period of time where over the first few days where they have trouble sleeping and maybe have trouble eating, maybe have a sore body, because even if you do prepare for the Camino, it's not the same as actually getting on the path. But interestingly enough, by stepping into the footsteps of the pilgrims before you, somehow you gather or you can gather this energy. And also the people around you, the pilgrims who are also walking, are supporting you and encouraging you on. And you hear about their stories and their trials and tribulations. And suddenly, your life doesn't look so bad. So it's all of the experience. It's Spain. It's the path. It's our intentions. It's the act of walking, of putting one foot in front of the other. That activity alone says you are on a journey. You are moving, regardless of what happens. And if nothing is happening at all, you're still in the act of moving forward.
I wrote a book about my first Camino. It's called My Camino. And one of the very last things that I say in the book, which I still feel so strongly about, is the idea that it took me 29 days to walk almost 800 kilometers. With each step I took forward, I walked back to my authentic self. And in the process of walking back to myself, I discovered that everything I needed was within me. And so many of us, go elsewhere to find the journey back to our heart or back to our authentic self or back to our soul or back to the oneness of the universe, whatever it is that you so desire. I really believe that it's possible on the Camino to have an experience that can profoundly affect your life from that day forward. So we have about 5 minutes left of this call. I've covered all the things that I mentioned in the outline. I apologize. I had this beautiful presentation to give to you with pictures and a video clip of a trailer for a documentary film that I did many years ago. It's called Las Peregrinas. And the trailer shows you, what pilgrims are wearing, what an albergue looks like inside. It shows you some of the terrain. You see pilgrims walking on like big chunks of gravel. You see trails walking through a forest. Sometimes you walk on concrete, pavement, granite, like all kinds of different terrains are covered while you walk the Camino, and you could see this on the trailer. So if you'd like to watch the trailer, you can see it on my website, which is www.sukenny.ca, or you can just Google Las Peregrinas, the women who walk, and you'll find the trailer. Also, just before I leave, I encourage you to use the Q&A application on this Google Hangout and ask any questions that you have. Because the call is only half an hour long, I'm not going to take the time to do a Q&A, but rather what I will do is I will answer your questions on the Google Hangout event page. I'll also post the link for the Las Peregrinas trailer so that you can have a look at that. Also, I wanted to just mention that I do take a group every year, as I said earlier, on the Camino. If you're interested in going with a group, or at least interested in finding out about it, I'd be happy to share more with you. I originally thought, after I walked the Camino twice alone, that you could only really do the Camino alone. I thought that that was the best way to do it. And until I took my first group. And then I realized that your Camino family becomes the group. And each evening, when we would get back together again after a day of walking, and often the pilgrims don't walk together. They meet new people, they meet other pilgrims, they are encouraged to walk alone. But at the end of the day, we always meet up and have a wonderful pilgrim meal and share stories and insights and experiences. And often there's lots of laughter. People are like physically exhausted, but you feel fantastic because you've been out in nature and you've been walking and you've used your body, and everything feels so great. What I do with my groups is I offer conference calls, or like this, a webinar idea, where I will talk about how to prepare for the Camino, what you need to do physically to prepare. I talk about what to pack, offer a packing list and suggestions and ideas of how to downsize, how to let go, what you absolutely, absolutely need to take with you. We also talk about the spiritual journey, creating intentions, and then we talk about, how to manifest those intentions. And we talk about different ways of being a pilgrim on the Camino, and some of the, the culture of Spain. And basically, we cover everything so that you just go on the Camino and everything is taken care of. You can just focus all of your time and energy on your journey. So I wonder, is the Camino calling you? If it is, listen closely, listen to your gut, listen to your intuition, and you'll know if it's right for you. If you're not sure of what time of year to go, see what happens, see when your life opens up. Think about what seasons you like the best and what temperatures you like to walk in, and then focus your journey on your own individual needs. There's a saying on the Camino that everybody says, and often you'll say it many times a day, and it's a simple buen camino, meaning have a good way. So as a fellow pilgrim in life and a pilgrim on the Camino, I'd like to wish you a buen camino, and I strongly encourage you to feel free to contact me at mycaminobook@gmail.com, or go to my website and you can contact me there if you have any questions at all. If you need some help, just getting going on your Camino, or you're not sure about something, feel free to contact me. And hopefully we'll meet you on the way. Buen Camino, and thank you for being a part of this first webinar.